issues or that our phone numbers are there, and you can make those contacts.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Stanley, and I'm with the Family Economic Security Program at the Colorado Center on Law and Policy. What CCLP does is we are a nonprofit organization that advocates for justice, economic security, and affordable health care for low-income Coloradans. So statistics show that living in housing is becoming an oxymoron for Colorado families. And I think everybody is aware of this. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling that, like I am. And so since 2007, the average rent in the state has increased by 21%, while the average income of renting family has increased by only 1.1%. There's a huge disparity there. So because of this, about a quarter of Colorado renters are spending more than 50% of their income on necessities like childcare, food, transportation. Overall, throughout the state, Colorado has a deficit of nearly 120,000 units for people who are living below 30% of their income. So we've got a lot of ground to make up. So this situation can be especially dire for some of our older Coloradans who are living on fixed incomes and who are experiencing astronomical rent increases. And this may be pushing people to the brink of homelessness for the first time in their lives. And the problem is so severe and so widespread. We really can't rely on the free market to correct itself and fix all these problems we're experiencing. So this is a time where we all need to step in and advocate for policies that support low-income people that are going to support our seniors. And so I'm going to go over a few bills that we're working with this session. Right now, we're in the midst of negotiations regarding a bill that would draw a significant amount of money from the unclaimed property trust fund to address some of these urgent needs. And you may remember this from last year. It was unfortunately it died. So we're bringing it back. Representatives Max Tyler and Juicy Becker are sponsoring the bill this year. And so this year the plan is to have most funds, about 80 or 90%, go to the Division of Housing, and this will be used on to defray the costs of rentals or renting for people who are renting homes, and it will also be used to construct and preserve affordable rental properties. And then the remainder, about 10 or 20% of the funds, will go to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and that will be used to help for down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, for people who are under 80% of their immediate income. So some of the finer details of the bill depend on a number of factors, but right now we're looking at making a one-time lump sum transfer from this unclaimed property trust fund, somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million, and give that to the Division of Housing. Then they would have the authority to administer that over 5 years for those purposes I outlined. But unfortunately, we're kind of in a holding pattern right now because we're waiting for the loan bill to be ironed out, waiting for a construction defects bill to be resolved. And additionally, the Joint Budget Committee has decided to use half of this unclaimed property trust fund money to balance the budget and to avoid some Tabor problems for next year's budget. And so that leaves us a little bit less money to work with, unfortunately. And also the amount of flexibility that we have with this bill is dependent on whether or not the hospital provider passes. So there are a lot of things in the air right now, but keep your ears open. And there's also another bill kind of in the same situation, which would extend the low-income housing tax credit. But again, this is dependent on a lot of factors going on in the legislature right now. And another bill which you can expect to be introduced will help strengthen protections for certain types of renters. Under current law, folks who are in a month-to-month rental agreement with no actual lease on paper only get 7 days notice before their before their tenancy can be terminated. And there's actually no state regulation regarding notices required for rent increases. So that can leave people in a really sticky situation. And nationwide, Colorado actually has the second shortest notice requirement period after North Carolina. So most states give 30 or 60 days notice, and most states also have regulations on how much notice you have to give for rent increases, and we don't have any. So this proposed legislation would require a landlord to give 30 days notice in the event of termination, and 60 days notice before increasing monthly rent. But this only applies to tenants classified as at-risk adults. So that means people who are 70 years of age or older, and adults who are 18 years of age or older but have a disability. So, and again, this is for renters who are in a month-to-month rental agreement with no paper lease. And this bill would be sponsored by Representative Pavone. It would provide tenants with the time necessary to find new housing accommodations and would likely play a role in curbing homelessness issues. So 7 days, as you can imagine, is not a reasonable period of time for anybody to find new housing arrangements, especially with how tight the housing market is here and in a lot of places around the state. And then to pack and move, that's a huge ask. And also consider that in some cases, folks who have made alterations to their homes, such as adding a ramp or lowering countertops or adding extra faucets or anything like that to accommodate a disability or make aging a little bit easier, sometimes have to dismantle or reverse those alterations before they leave their home within that 7-day period. So that's a lot to ask and can be incredibly challenging. And a final bill that I'll mention is sponsored by Faith Winter, and she's representative here, and this is House Bill 1334. And this would allow county governments to initiate inclusionary zoning programs in the unincorporated areas of the counties. And these programs would essentially encourage or require a certain number of housing units in a proposed housing development to be priced in a way that's affordable for the folks in that community. And this would be voluntary, and it's hard to say how many counties would take advantage of it, but we feel like it's another good step in the right direction. It's clear we need to address the urgent housing needs in the Colorado market with special attention to our older Coloradans. So these bills that I mentioned, we believe would promote economic diversity and would lead to healthy and happy aging and lives lived at home. So thank you so much for your time.
I'm the project coordinator for a project called Building a Better Colorado, which I know some of you have participated in. I see some familiar faces. Building Better Colorado was a project that was born last summer by a bipartisan group of statewide leaders with an interest in hosting a statewide conversation on a number of key issues, challenges facing our state, including the state's fiscal policy, our process for amending our Constitution, and our election process. Recognizing the increasing number of amendments to the Constitution and the quagmire majority amount that that's creating in the Constitution to meet fiscal responsibilities and the decreasing participation in the election process. Over the course of about 5 months through that project, we hosted about 30 community meetings, engaged 2,000 civic leaders across the state, from Lamar to Sterling to Crane to Durango, and several locations along the Front Range. We engaged another 6,000 people in an online virtual platform, and then hosted a series of focus groups and statewide polling with several thousand Coloradans to kind of test where we saw consensus emerge. The final report of that project identified a number of policy recommendations, which I'll jump to real quick. On fiscal policy, the consensus policy recommendation was to allow the state to keep revenue beyond the Tabor limit while still retaining the citizens' right to vote on all tax increases. Basically allow the state services to grow when the economy grows so that we're not slashing higher ed in a robust economy. The recommendations also included the priority funding areas should be education, transportation, long-term senior care, and mental health services. Regarding the ballot process, there was strong consensus around the state for making it more difficult to amend our state's constitution, which is currently one of the easiest constitutions in the nation to amend, because we require fewer signatures, we require only a simple majority to pass constitutional amendments, which is somewhat unique to Colorado. Because of that, we have a lot of interest from outside special interest groups who want to use Colorado's constitution as kind of a political playground to test their policy agenda. So Colorado has seen more citizen initiatives on its ballot than any other state in the nation other than California and Oregon. So if your vision for better Colorado is to look like California and Oregon, and that's where we're at. The third recommendation regarding the election process was to make it easier for unaffiliated voters to participate in the election process because unaffiliated voters today make up the largest block of voters in the state, 37%. They're also the fastest growing block of voters. 2 out of 3 voters that registered in 2014 registered unaffiliated. So in a few short years, the Republicans and the Democrats together are going to be in the minority, and the largest block of voters at that point in time, which will be the majority of voters, cannot participate in the primary process unless they choose to affiliate. So there was a recommendation to make it easier for unaffiliated. So since then, in the last 6 weeks, 3 different independent campaigns have stood up to pursue implementation of those recommendations. Ballot titles have been filed. The ones that you are probably most interested in regarding fiscal policy, there are titles that have been filed that would allow the state to keep revenue beyond the taper limit and would specifically dedicate any of those additional revenues, a minimum dedication of 35% to the spectrum of education needs, minimum dedication of 35% to transportation needs, and the remaining monies could be spent on long-term senior care and or mental health services. And there's a couple of variations of that title. On ballot reform, titles have been filed to require that if proponents are pursuing future amendments to the Constitution, that they should have to gather signatures from more than just the largest Walmart in the largest city. They should actually have to go around the state and gather some signatures in each of the state's 35 state senate districts so that the entire state is kind of involved in considering future constitutional amendments. The measure would also require that future constitutional amendments pass by 55% as opposed to the simple majority that we currently have at 50%. And there is titles that have also been filed by a third entity that would make it easier for unaffiliated voters to vote. They would receive a ballot that they could vote Democrat or Republican in the primary without having to affiliate and then unaffiliate for the purposes of that election. So those measures are in the process of securing titles, and then we'll be gathering signatures. So you may be seeing those measures, hearing more about them, certainly over the coming weeks as they do qualify.
Come on, you can do better than that. Can we have a big round of applause for all of our presenters? And this is what happens when you have a lot of information, a lot of valuable information, and not a lot of time to present it. Our break was scheduled to be at 10. I've got about 10 after right now, so 10. Come back at 10. Okay, I know that's not a lot of time, but we're trying to give you a lot of valuable information. So we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes. Remember, the restrooms are out to the right and down in the basement. Please watch your step as you make your exit, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
I got here late. I didn't know I
Oh, yeah.
how we doing, Ken?
Keep it up.
Well, looks like you're having fun.
Yeah.
Did you call that fun?
Just gonna monitor and make sure everything stays running.
So you're better than me. Someday I will know how to use a computer.
Well, this is new territory for me too, live streaming it.
Man,
It's fun. Technical issues. I should have brought a second person to help me out.
I just got a smartphone to show me how stupid I am. Man. Oh well, give me 100 years, I'll get it.
There you go. Good meeting you, man.
Good meeting you, have fun.
Thanks.
So the audio can get any better. It's just that's what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Is it really just play the right here?
it's just too much. I mean, this door is busy, you know?
Because I'm upstairs listening to this. We're gonna take care of it.
Okay, cool.
The audio table. Are you the audio table that's supposed to be blocking?
Yeah, so stand there and look out.
anything you say, they're going to hear upstairs. We'll see if you can find it. Once everything gets in and gets situated again, I'll do this by myself.
They were gonna close this door and have people come in and out the other door.
Just help me block it until they get started. Guarding the table.
You gotta keep people away from the table.
Two of the centers that we canceled for some reason this morning. We found out. So the experiment's working out.
Yeah.
Next year, if we do it next year, yeah, if they do it next year, the dedicated audio feed is needed 100%. But the stream looks good, except for the one thing. The video quality is very good.
I don't know what happened the one time either, because my software locked up on me.
Well, we're going to help you get
I
stuff
just had to reboot real quick, everything came back up.
Yeah, I came back
Maybe
on
starting up the stream.
Yeah, I saw that once I got back onto the YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I'm hoping
Because I was just refreshing it at 5. They've got it. They'll figure it out. They didn't call me, so and mine's the number for emergency numbers. Yeah, nobody's called me.
Doing all right.
These volunteers are going to keep everybody away.
Hi. Do you have a business card?
I don't have one on.
But you're here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of more information for you. A lot of good information, valuable information. Make sure you look at the information in your bags. That is information that is oh so important to you and to your living situation. All right, I just have one thing I'd like to say that Ed wanted me to tell you, that when Jim Reesberg got up from the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging, that two of the directors for Colorado Senior Lobby, Karen Brown and Kai Agnew, are also part of that committee. So I wanted to let you know those two people are part of that committee. Now we're going to hear from Kelly Freaks, AARP Colorado. Would you give a warm welcome to Kelly?
Morning, everybody. Hope you had a nice break and you're all ready to talk some issues, right? Yeah, okay. I'm Kelly Fritz, Associate State Director for AARP Colorado, and there are a few of our folks here. Ben Moultrie is also an AARP volunteer. There he is, Ben. Just a few waves. And Ben also, he's a volunteer for us, but he's also our lead on one of the bills that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Something that we're strongly supporting in Colorado and the nation. And it's something, we call it Work and Save at AARP, but in Colorado, the bill that's out, it's called the Colorado Secure Savings Plan. And we are super excited about it. It just came out last Thursday night. It's House Bill 1403, and it is sponsored by Representative Janet Buckner and Brittany Pettison, and in the Senate, Nancy Todd and Donovan, Senators Todd and Donovan. Now, why is this so exciting to us? Well, just go back to something that Representative Reesberg said when he talked about the need for savings as we get older. Just out of curiosity, everybody here good in their savings? Did everybody start saving in their 20s? Yes? Yeah? No? Ideally, that's when you really do need to start saving. Can you imagine how much money you would have now if you started savings in your 20s? But not everybody gets that opportunity. They don't. And we want everyone to have that opportunity to start saving as young as possible. And how's the best way to do it? Well, through your work. Well, what if your work doesn't offer you a savings plan? A lot of them don't. A lot of work plans do not. There's a huge need out there. Ideally, everybody goes to a financial planner and gets a plan if they don't have one at work, but that doesn't always happen. So for everybody, what we want and what we're trying to achieve with this bill is whether your employer offers a plan or not, that you have the opportunity to start saving in your workplace now. Wouldn't that be awesome? We like to say, someday we want to aspire to retire. Wouldn't that be great? I know I want to do it, but to do it, you do have to have the money to do it. You have to have the ability. And that's what House Bill 1403 is all about. It basically provides an opt-out provision. Everybody would be opting into the plan. You can opt out if you don't want to be in it, but you would opt in, and you start at 5% savings right away, so that someday you have a lot of money to retire. Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know why it's even controversial. Anyway, we're super excited about it. We're thinking it's probably going to go to committee next week or the week after. Heck, we only have, another month and a half left of session. So it's going to be coming up pretty quickly, and we are asking for everyone's support. Please do talk to your House members and your senators and ask them to support 1403. for us at ARP. I'm gonna ask, was anybody here a couple years ago when I talked about telecom deregulation? You guys remember that? Out of curiosity, anybody's rates go down after that? Anybody's service quality get better? Yeah, okay. All right, so going back to that conversation, Colorado did deregulate telecom 2 years ago. Rates are going up, service isn't getting any better. Okay, that happens, all right? But there's still one issue out there, and that's 911. And 911, in our opinion, still needs to be regulated. Why? Why is that? Why should it be regulated by the Colorado Public Utilities Commission? That's right. You don't call 911 for giggles. You call 911 because you need emergency help. You need to know it's going to work. Well, there was a case about a month ago in front of the Public Utilities Commission on this very subject. And they were looking at, do they still have the ability to regulate 911 services in Colorado? You'd almost think this would be a no-brainer, right? They should be doing this? Well, it was a question. So 911 is still a huge question in this state, whether or not it's regulated. So one of the things that happened is there was a fellow from the city of Lakewood who got up and testified at this hearing. And he talked about how there was a Verizon outage for about 2 hours. And when people called 911, you know what they got? All circuits are busy. So there is a need for, can you move on? Okay. Anyway. Okay. All right, so I'll just say there is a need for regulation of 911, and I want to just ask for your support too of House Bill 1376, which would give the Office of Consumer Counsel that ability to bring telecom back into their purview. So with that said, please do that.
This is one of those occasions where we had to break in, so I'm not sure if we can get back with Kelly, hopefully so. But at this time, we'd like for the Governor to step forward if he's ready. All right, thank you. So please get over.
Good morning. Well, you guys are chipper. So I wanted to take just a few minutes. I'm going to speak for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then answer questions for 5 or 10 minutes, and then get out of your hair. But usually the questions are always the most rewarding part of it. First thing, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here, because this is the most fragile form of government there is. It depends on two very critical foundations to make a democracy like American democracy work. One is you've got empathy. People have to be willing to think not just about themselves, but about someone they may never meet. And second is they've got to be informed. They've got to be willing to take the time and invest themselves to get the real facts on as many issues as they can, and really, ingest that information and then use it making decisions. There's some seats up here in the front where folks that if you're getting tired of standing. So, yeah, there are 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 10 seats. So obviously you're all aware of the pressures that are on, a lot of the systems we have. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, housing, transportation, healthcare services. We're seeing as the number of seniors, and I'm proud to say I'm 64 years old, so I'm a card-carrying senior. We just hired the chief operating officer for the state of Colorado. I don't want to say he's 62 years old. So we have a certain amount of wisdom invested in the institution. But as the aging population grows, we are seeing increasing financial pressures, especially on middle class families and lower income families. And we're trying to figure out how to be a leader in addressing these demographic shifts. We've grown our state funding for senior services from $9 million in 2013 to $21 million in 2015. But again, the pressures are equal to that and more. partnered with area agencies in aging last year, so we together helped deliver 1 billion hot meals and over 300,000 lives to older adults. We signed House Bill 151033, which was a strategic planning group on aging, which helps us, Colorado is, because of Tabor, and I think for good reasons, we're very constrained. So we're a low tax state, which means we're not going to have the resources. We have to be very, very strategic in where we use those resources. That strategic planning group on aging is going to help prepare our framework for how to create those strategies, where to use the resources we do have. Jim Reesberg, I know a number of you know Jim Reesberg. He's a chair on that. I know several of you in this room are on that group. We want to make sure that we recognize and communicate to the rest of the state that seniors are a valuable resource. And we've made a conscious effort in the last couple of years to look at how to get more seniors onto boards and commissions to make sure the voice and the perspective is heard. We recognize that, especially where individuals have a passion or a real commitment for something, that they get an opportunity to embrace that and give back to the community and allow them to, hopefully, whatever board or commission it is, they get to better outcomes. I'll finish with just a quick thing on this whole hospital provider fee, because that's my. How many of you think you understand the hospital provider fee? What it is? Not very many. So I've worked really hard to get this. I've got this down to 2.5 minutes, and if I can stay tight. So Colorado has Tabor, which sets a limit on how much the state can spend and how much that spending can grow each year. So when we reset the Tabor limit on how much the state can spend back in 2005, with Referendum C, remember those of you who lived in Colorado at that time, big statewide campaign. So we reset that limit, and very few states, we went through that recession and it came out of it, very few states have been able to maintain that limit. And the limit changes each year only by the amount of inflation and the population growth. So 2%, if our population grew by 2% and inflation was 3%, we can increase our spending by 5%. It's a very rigorous, strict limitation, and it doesn't recognize certain things like the growth of the number of seniors that are going to need more services. In other words, we'd have to go to the voters and say, here's specifically the service we want to provide. But Tabor, it sets that cap, limited by population growth and inflation. And since 2005, we have stayed under. Among all the states, there are very few that can say we have limited our spending by inflation plus population, with one exception. And the one exception was 2009, the legislature created this thing called the hospital provider fee. It doesn't go in the general fund. When they created Tabor, they specifically allowed for the creation of fees. And this is a charge, a fee per hospital bed in the whole state. The money gets collected by the state. We use it to get a dollar-to-dollar match from the federal government and use it to, the hospitals were getting killed because indigents, homeless people would show up at the emergency rooms and the hospitals had to provide them care. They couldn't get compensated. So the hospital provider fee was set up so that they could get compensated. Now, for various reasons, I'm not quite clear, when they set up in 2009, they did not set it up as a fee. They set it up as normal revenue coming into the state. And so it has pushed us. They thought it would take 10 years for the state to rebound economically. Well, the state's come back stronger than we could have ever hoped. And now we're bumped up to that limit. It looks like this year we're not going to go over it. But what it means is you end up having that hospital provider fee, which doesn't get refunded. That has been will cause us to do refunds that takes money away from other programs, transportation, in some cases, all kinds of things. It could be programs for seniors. So that whole trick, it doesn't, hospital provider fee, if you read what we're arguing about is whether it should be reclassified truly as a fee. We call it, it's always been called a fee, but it's been treated like just general revenue into or common income into the general fund. It's been hotly debated. We have the Attorney General, who's a pretty conservative Republican. Her predecessor, John Suthers, who's now the mayor of Colorado Springs, another very conservative lawyer. They both say it's legally it's a fee. It looks like a fee, it sounds like a fee, it is a fee. It does, again, you know, that's really not as appropriate, is it? Anyway, that's what the hospital provider fee is. You're going to hear a lot more about it, but, you know, we are, in terms of addressing some of the traffic congestion between Colorado Springs and Fort Collins, and going across on I-70, and we just don't have the resources. We can't find them out. We can't figure them somewhere. And really, we do have the revenues, I think, or we will have the revenues. If the hospital provider fee was properly allocated as a fee, we wouldn't have to raise taxes. We could really address some of these transportation issues just with the revenue we already have. All right. Questions?
We had collected some questions from some of you, and we know that the basket is still floating around with other questions. Okay, and I do have a couple of questions for you. Someone wanted to know, we know Colorado as a state must play a role in helping the aging population thrive into old age. Do you see a role for the business community to step up and help out? If yes, how do you envision them partnering with the state? And if yes, has the state taken any efforts to promote such a partnership?
So, the challenge here is business is a big amorphous creature, and it's hard to figure out how you talk to business. You can talk to some retail businesses, you can talk to large providers, but there is a way for businesses to play a role, and a number of businesses already do this. They get discounts. And I think that the Department of Local Affairs, I don't know where they are on this, but they've talked about trying to orchestrate and organize within different communities around the state, different retail businesses that say, hey, this could be good for your business if you give seniors 5% off, 10% off. You know, you're going to drive business, attract business to your place, at the same time, do your bit in terms of trying to make life a little more manageable for seniors.
Thank you so much. Do you have time for another one? All right. Yes.
See, Connor back up there, that young guy controls time. He says I have time for questions.
Okay, so let's take another. It says, several states have a separate Department of Elder Affairs. For instance, in Kansas, the governor has a cabinet-level position. The Department of Aging and Disability Resources separates from the Department of Children and Families. And in Utah, the Commission on Aging is located in the governor's office. Given that in the next decade, 20% or more of the Colorado population would be over 65, would you consider either one of these options for your administration?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think again, I am a small government person, so I'm constantly, we've been trying to figure out how to have less people in government and do more. And that's not as easy as that. Yeah, there you go. It's not as easy as it sounds. So I'm pretty cautious about creating new positions if I can't figure someplace else to cut. But I think certainly there might be a way to create some sort of an office for the elderly, or you know, either within the governor's office or more, you know, perhaps in one of the family and children. I mean, you know, break it out so that they have their own dedicated personnel, and make sure that we take that staff position from somewhere else.
Okay. Do you envision retiring one day, and have you started reimagining what your life would look like after governor?
Now, I'm going to assume that the person who asked that question wasn't encouraging me to retire, like prematurely. So I love what I do. I mean, I love every day being governor. I love being mayor. You know, I worked in the restaurant business for 16 years, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, and you know, many years we would get a vacation, and I just loved it. I love doing that. I've been very fortunate to love everything I've ever done. Now, as governor, I'm not saying I love every minute of everything. Let's be perfectly honest. But there is something, you know, by the time it gets to my desk, it's usually a problem that that other people couldn't solve. And so part of my job is try to get the smartest people from the different sides of an issue and try to get everyone to calm down and listen to each other and find a compromise, which it's challenging, but it's very, I mean, you're meeting the most interesting people and you're dealing with the most challenging problems in the state. So certainly I'm going to do this until for the last 2.5 years. I've got almost 3 years left. But my guess is I'm not sure I want to retire. And I know many people look forward to retiring, and probably many of you are enjoying retirement. But I guess I've been so lucky to do stuff that if I can find something where I'm useful, you know, I was very lucky in the restaurant business. We worked so hard for all those years, and then suddenly it's just like beer became popular. Right? No, I'm serious. It was like we opened the wine brewing company back in 1988 when the rent lower downtown was $1 per square foot per year. Right? So that's how far I'm there. Tumbleweeds blowing down the Lake Street and Wazee. I'm not kidding. On a weekend day, it was just an abandoned, you know, warehouse wasteland. And then somewhere, you know, it was even before the Rockies. The Rockies started playing in '95, but all of a sudden, '93, we started, sales just started going crazy, and people opened other restaurants. Our sales kept going up. And so I'm in that blessed position where I don't have to work. Now, it doesn't mean I'm never going to have a private jet. I'm not one of those people. But if I can find something to do that where I can feel useful and that I'm not wasting my time or other people's time, if it's a useful investment, I think I'll keep working as long as I'm able, just because, you know, I know I just feel like I'm healthier. The more I do, the healthier I am. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys for being here.
Keep writing your questions. We'll try to answer some of them in our afternoon session. Thank you so much, Governor. Now, so do we go back with Kelly? We have some moments. Yes? You want to finish hearing from Kelly? Okay, let's do that. Kelly first, AARP Colorado.
Just want to give a quick shout out. Our regional vice president for AARP is here today too, Kim Adler. Okay, so as I was telling you guys about 911, anyway, 911 still needs to be regulated, and we really believe this. You know, why should it be regulated at the state level? You know, a lot of people say, well, they could just call the feds. Call the feds on it, no problem. Again, how would we even know that what happened in Lakewood happened if we didn't have some sort of local place to capture that and to find the phone companies when they do this? Well, needless to say, they don't want to do this. And it's specifically two issues. Number one, wireless carriers were never really regulated by the PUC. And Comcast, VoIP, it's called VoIP. Does anybody have Comcast? Yeah, they were never regulated. So they don't want any regulation, and they want to make it very clear that even 911 is not regulated. So here's the deal. We know there are conversations going on in this building to deregulate. They're not including us, though. We hear about it third hand and restroom stalls and weird conversations with this person at dinner. And then we go, well, what's going on? And people say, oh, nothing's going on. Yes, something is going on. We do know there's a bill in drafting, and here we are again, the final month and a half of session. And we anticipate something probably last minute being dropped that nobody will really have enough time to respond to and say, whoa, again, it's a safety issue. A couple weeks ago, I spoke to a room of third graders, and they totally got it. And they're like, why are we even doing this? And I'm like, that's a good question. Why can't we, explain to these folks here what a dumb idea that is? But anyway, so that's still out there, still of concern. The other bill that I was telling you about, the Office of Consumer Counsel, basically they represent consumers in front of the Public Utilities Commission. So when cases like this come up, they should have been there to represent you, but they weren't, Because last year, when they renewed the Office of Consumer Counsel, they renewed it taking out telecom because they said there is no telecom still being regulated. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. That's 911. So Representatives Escar and Winter introduced 1376. It would include a lot of different subjects for the Office of Consumer Counsel as it was originally drafted, but one of them includes bringing telecom back. They also put in there taxi and water regulation too, but you know, again, the big one, especially for us, was telecommunication. That bill is up in committee next week. You know, again, we need support for this. Why that was taken out was not in anybody's best interest. So again, that's another big issue for us at ARP. Somebody said, well, tell everybody what's going on today, why we're not seeing legislators, because normally this would be the time when they would come in. Do you guys know why they're not here? What's going on? The budget, yeah. The budget, they've been talking a little bit about that, but this week the long bill or the budget bill is being debated in the Colorado House. And there's a lot of things in there, and there's a lot of things not in there. I think all of us in this room can think about a lot of things that really should be covered in our state budget that are not. And it's for that reason, again, at ARP, why we support amending our Constitution to give the state flexibility to fund the needs of our citizens.
No.
No? Yes. 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 Anyway, that's going to be a big issue, and you are going to get that opportunity to probably vote on that. Reeves talked about that. We're super excited. You know I personally will be asking all my friends to sign the petition, and I'm asking for their support of this. I think it's truly one of the most important issues in the state. I was wondering, why is it all the really big important bills weren't introduced until late in the session? And basically why that was is they've been busy since January when they first kicked off talking about the budget, trying to negotiate on the budget. You know, there's a bill, and I'll just say that a lot of our volunteers really like. It's a tax credit for caregivers. People specifically in the sandwich generation who take care of their kids and they take care of their parents. Wow, what a difference that would make for caregivers in this state. But you know what? It's got a huge fiscal note, which means it has no hope of passing. Again, that's a budget issue. But what a difference that would make for middle-class families in Colorado. What a difference. We can't do stuff like that here in Colorado because we don't have the money. Anyway, those are some of our hot issues. My friend Rich Morrow, we do a lot together here at the Capitol, and so I thought I'd ask him, come on over here, Rich. What else are other things?
She just wants me to help her fill the time, I think. So I think that's one of the things that happens with this agenda at these senior day meetings. I think we're probably still waiting for the AG, for the Attorney General to show. So and legislators still aren't showing up because I think they're all in caucus on their budget. So we've got a little bit more time to try to fill. So gives us a chance to talk more about legislation. And yeah, that's a good idea. We can take questions.
We can't hear you. Tabor, okay. Tabor. For those who don't know Tabor, I affectionately refer to it as the Taxpayer Bill of Wrongs. It was passed in 1992. It is the most restrictive tax and spending limitation in the United States of America. It basically says that anytime you want to do anything with taxes, reduce them, increase them, whatever, you have to take it to the voters. And in theory, that sounds super, doesn't it? It really does. But here's the issue. To do that, you have to run a campaign. That costs millions of dollars to get something on the ballot and then to convince voters to vote for it. And the other side who doesn't like taxes, they always go, vote no, it's your no. And we gotta go, vote yes, it's your roads, it's your education, it's your, your health care. And that doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. That's not cute and fun and, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not as easy as people might think to go out and do this stuff. But again, it sounds good. Anyway, it is embedded in our Constitution. It has a lot more provisions than just that. It had an arcane formula of how they, figure out our value of Colorado population plus inflation. It's not based in reality. Again, there's all kinds of other pieces to it too, but basically what it does is it's a way to limit our budget. And I think people voted for this thinking, oh, this is great because, everybody just wants to raise our taxes. Well, this is representative democracy. If they're not looking out for your best interest in raising taxes here and there, you can vote them out. But with Tabor, we don't have that ability. We're stuck with Tabor, up or down. We're stuck with Tabor. And it's a really frustrating thing. Thank you for your question. Yeah, that's another okie thing. So basically it limits revenue and it limits spending. It does both things with Tabor. And in years like this year when we may have a little extra money, that could go to education and higher education, we're having to refund that to the voters because it hits a certain limit and we have to give it back. Oh, and okay, now I'm being told she's here. No? Yes? No? Yes? It does. It's an administrative cost to send it back. And I know there are people that can really use that money. I get that. But again, Colorado may be the first state in the United States to totally privatize higher education because we're not funding it. Again, these are things that do really impact our families, our communities, everything. Everything. Yeah, just to return it. Yes, ma'am. We didn't take a stand on that. Basically, when we talk to our membership about issues, they're pretty evenly divided on this issue. So we chose to stay out of it and stay focused where we really felt we could do a better job. But thank you for asking.
Somebody was asking me to repeat the question. It was about the right to die legislation. There were 2 bills that were introduced this year. There were actually a couple of bills last year. The bills didn't pass, but I will add that the Colorado Senior Lobby also took neutral positions on those bills because we recognize that they're still really controversial even within our own membership. So I think there's still a lot of discussion that needs to continue about that, but I don't think the issue is going to go away.
Come on, give me some more questions.
Did someone say that Attorney General?
We just saw somebody's hand go up and we thought it was hers, but it wasn't.
I have a couple of questions for you guys.
Oh, let's hear it.
This question says, and you probably alluded to some of the answers. What are the 2 biggest challenges you see for Colorado in addressing the needs and challenges of the aging population in Colorado in the next 2 decades that would focus on the members of our community that are 65 and older? So what do you see as the biggest challenges?
Thank you so much for that easy question. I don't know. I mean, I think that one of the biggest challenges is really to get the majority of people and policymakers especially to understand that this is a really serious issue. And I like what Jim Reesberg said earlier too about it's kind of balancing understanding the importance of the demographics that are driving this with not just the aging of the baby boomers, but the generation, particularly the millennial generation coming after. Colorado's like the 3rd fastest growing state in the older populations in the country. But we're going to get older and we're going to stay older for a long time. And that has impacts on really everything in terms of revenues to state and local government because their spending habits change and so tax revenues are affected. It has impacts on demands for services. It has implications for even development. If you think about where you live, you have different needs as you get older than you did maybe when you were younger, and we need to work with the private sector and the public sector to build more, quote, senior-friendly communities. So a lot of it is getting this understanding, but as I think was mentioned, not as a problem or needs in that sense, but also how to take advantage of a real opportunity with those of us who are getting up there in years and the wisdom and the experience and the ability to continue to contribute to making our society better. And so I think anything that we can start doing now and in the future to continue to invest more in our older populations, all of us will be better off.
And I would echo that. I think affordable housing is a big issue. I think we were talking about mobility, that's a big issue. I'll just ask a question too. How many of you are caregivers? Just out of curiosity, a fair number. I think that's a big issue too, and that's a piece of the long-term care. You know, how we deliver care and how we, you know, as a community address this issue, that's a big issue too, as far as what we hear from our membership. And again, having that ability to retire, like what I was talking about earlier, having the money to retire, having, you know, to pay your medical bills, to take care of your families, to live independently. That's what everybody wants to do. This is Colorado. This is who we are. We're the rugged individual, right?
Reeves Brown mentioned that the ballot issue potentially would give money for seniors, and he said long-term care. Have you looked at the specifics of that potential ballot issue and exactly where that money would go?
Yes, and you can see these ballot measures. They are online. There's like 3 or 4 of them that they're looking at right now. And no, they don't spell out. I'll just come out and say that. They do not spell out that money will go for long-term care. But why that's such an important part of the conversation is because if we don't do anything with our fiscal situation as it is right now, we're going to have less and less money to give to long-term care in the state and more people who need it. So that's where it kind of fits in, but no, it's not really spelled out, but we can see when you look at the overall budget and the long-term projections, what drives it. Long-term care is a huge one, huge.
Well, so I think that's why that probably the real proof on that one is if it passes, will be then afterward help being involved in figuring out what the details of implementing that about 30% of money's going for senior services or whatever, that is spent wisely and more in the most cost-effective manners. Because as Kelly said, you know, projections, if we do nothing different, that the demands in the long-term care area is going to be real impactful on the budget and limit a lot of what we can do in the state budget. And that's one of the main issues that I think the strategic planning group is looking at too, how we can address these fiscal issues in a preventive way, really, to so that we spend our money on services and areas that help people live in the community where they want to live and are less expensive than a lot of long-term care is. So that's going to be a real important issue going forward.
I know that Ed alluded to this earlier, but this question says, one of the biggest
Cost for the aging population is the rising cost of drugs. Do you have suggestions on potential solutions to address the constant change, as well as the astronomical cost of some drugs in the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars annually?
Well, again, is what we were saying before. We are the country basically that does we spend the money to research these drugs. But the truth of the story is we spend more money on marketing than we do on research and development. Most of the research and development is done on your dime through the National Institutes of Health. So there are a lot of things that need to be done. And specifically, I think Congress needs to act, and we need the ability to negotiate with drug providers for lower rates. They don't like that, but that's something we need to do. just saying. Anyway, I do see the Attorney General here. So, yes, I'm going to hand it back to you, Tim.
Thank you, too, for that information. And now we'll hear from Cynthia Kaufman, our Attorney General. As she comes forward, could you clap her up, please?
That's great. I want somebody to go with me and say, clap it up. I really like that. Well, good morning. What a robust crowd you are. I wasn't sure how many people to expect, and you packed the house. I'm very impressed. So I'm Cynthia Kaufman. I'm the Attorney General for the state of Colorado. That is a statewide elected position, and I won in the November 2014 election. So I've just started my second year as Attorney General. I was in the office, though, for 10 years before that, in the number 2 spot as the Chief Deputy Attorney General. So I had a lot of opportunity to get to know the office and the people and the issues, and also to have some ideas of my own about what I would do if I ever sat in the corner office as the Attorney General. And so now I have the privilege of doing that. And I wanted to tell you about one of my key initiatives, because it reaches out and touches a lot of you in this room. I realized when I was out campaigning that not many people know what the Attorney General does. Now, I'm sure everybody here knows everything about the Attorney General's office, but just in case you don't, we are the lawyers for the state of Colorado. We, in fact, are the largest law firm in the entire state. We have 280 lawyers. I hear gasps. It always gets that reaction. The idea of 280 lawyers in one place is really frightening to them. We have a total of 500 people in the office. So we have investigators and consumer advocates, folks who do the business of the Department of Law, as we are called. We represent all of the agencies of the state of Colorado, all of the boards and the commissions, and we also represent statewide elected officials. One client we don't have is the legislature, and we try to give them guidance. We read all the legislation. I'm laughing at former Senator Hudak in the front row, who knows all about this. We try to give guidance when we see legislation coming through here at the Capitol that we think either creates a conflict in statutes or with our state constitution, but that's really our role as it goes with the legislature. And they are an independent lawmaking body. So with all these lawyers, we sit across the street in the Rothkard Judicial Center. That is our home. All of our lawyers are here in Denver. One of the things that we have done, and I think done very well, but sometimes without a lot of marketing and PR, is deal with consumer issues and consumer fraud, charitable fraud, dealing with all of the scams that go on and getting out information about those. So I created an Office of Community Engagement to do consumer protection and public safety advocacy. And the small shop of a couple of people, but they're doing great things. And I charged them with, and they're not lawyers. They're not lawyers, they talk real people talk. But they are working with communities around the state to find out where we have gaps in information and in services, and to try and fill those gaps. My charge to them was, let's make government work better, but don't create anything new. Just take what we have, network people together, get out information about good programs around the state, and we will have accomplished, I think, our purpose and what we need to do. I did not know just how much of the work of that group would be related to consumer fraud. Because frankly, even though I had been in the office for 10 years and I paid attention to our press releases about different types of scams, It was only when I started going out and talking about these crafty people, and that's a compliment, they're con men and women, who are targeting particularly vulnerable adults and older adults, which I am becoming one, and I'm happy about that. However, there are a lot of unscrupulous people who expend a lot of energy coming up with ways to rip us off, aren't there? And they get more creative and more convincing with time. It's no longer the old snake oil salesman you could spot a mile away, both by appearance and by message. These folks are slick. And it takes us a while to crack the code and find out what they are doing. And then we try to get the information out to you all so that you can be aware and you can help us stop those frauds. And unfortunately, with AARP in partnership with the Attorney General's office back in 2001. And it has been a real asset, I think, to the state of Colorado and to our outreach efforts with older adults. So we get a lot of phone calls in on our consumer protection hotline, and that number is 800-222-4444. We get calls in, and when we have something that is an issue particular to seniors, and we know that seniors are being targeted, then we work with AARP. They have trained, not operators, they have trained helpers, really, ombudsmen, who will help us figure out where the calls are coming from, what the latest method of operation is, what's the message, how are these people selling themselves, and marketing it. And then we take that information, first of all, we try to go out and catch these folks. Now, I will tell you, and you probably know this because you're a savvy crowd, when it comes to things like the IRS scams, where someone pretends to be an IRS agent, and they sound convincing, don't they? Yeah, they threaten you. They say, we're going to show up with a warrant for your arrest. Or if you don't give us a credit card number or get a prepaid debit card or give us access to your checking account right now, someone's going to show up on your doorstep with a warrant. Well, that's pretty scary stuff. Now, the vast majority of these folks are out of the country. They are able to spoof their telephone numbers so that it looks like generally they're in New York or they're in LA, but they aren't. And unfortunately, because they're outside the United States, they're really hard to find. And they are outside of our reach many times, but that doesn't stop us from trying. They leave phone numbers on people's voicemail, and folks call us and say, here's the phone number. Of course, there's never anybody on the other end of that line. They change phone numbers and spoof them just as fast as they possibly can, because they know that our office and that other consumer protection agencies are looking for them. So we do our best, but we need folks to be really savvy. And you know this, but the IRS is never going to call you at home, right? They're not going to call you. They will send you a letter that tells you, and they're required to do that by law, tells you if there's an issue with your taxes. And only then, and usually they give you a number to call, will you see any outreach. The same is true. Somebody was pretending to be from the Attorney General's office. I took real offense to that. And calling folks and saying, the Attorney General's office is going to take legal action if you don't pay a back fee or a back tax. We don't do that either. We don't collect fees and taxes. We don't call people for their personal information. And I would just say, anytime anybody asks you for those special numbers, your birthday, your social security number, a credit card number, hang up on them. We are all trained and taught from childhood to be polite. And I will never forget, I was on the phone with a telemarketer one time. My husband said, who are you talking to? It sounds like, they're your best friend, but I can tell from the conversation it's not. And I I hung up and I said, oh, it's just a telemarketer. Really, do you have to be so friendly? Do you have to strike up a conversation and talk about your dog and the children? And that's it. I was brought up by my mom to always be polite on the telephone. Well, I'm telling you, it's okay to hang up the telephone on these people. That's really what they deserve. Because they are just out to make as many calls as they can and get as much money as they possibly can. And if they weren't successful, they would stop. So they've got to be getting money from people. They're getting enough to make it worthwhile, right? To continue doing this. So we are all going to stop fraud together in Colorado. Now, if you are a user of the intranet, as I think most of us are, we have this great website that I have to plug called stopfraudcolorado.gov. And that's all smushed together in one sentence, lowercase, stopfraudcolorado.gov. You can also find it through the Colorado Attorney General if you just put that into a search. But Stop Fraud is a website that we have put together with all sorts of information about these scams. And we will let you know the latest. What are folks up to and what can you expect? We put out alerts, we put out fraud alerts with the latest information. We do a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to. I promise we will not spam you, we will not sell the list. It is strictly for our use to communicate with you. And there's just a load of information on there about common scams, about what to watch for. And you can be not only my eyes and ears, but you can help educate people around you. Because not everybody is as on top of things and paying attention. And that's how folks get kind of drawn into this web sometimes by con people who are very convincing. But if they hear from you, if your friends and neighbors and your family members hear from you what the latest scam is, right, they're going to believe it and they will know to be prepared. Has anybody this spring, or actually we had a lot of this last summer and fall because of the weather, you got a call from a roofer or had somebody come to your house and offer to give you an estimate for your roof? I'm sure there's some legitimate business people out there who solicit business that way. But a lot of these folks are not for real. And what we have seen quite a bit of, and we see it as the weather turns, is that these folks show up with flyers and they look good. I mean, they look slick. I get them on my door in Denver all the time. I'll go home tonight, there will be 3 or 4 or 5 of them. They offer to come and give you an estimate on your roof. Well, what I found out, I had no idea people were this mean. There are groups that will go up on your roof to inspect and actually cause damage while they are up there. See, you know it, I'm very mean. They will take shingles off, they'll put a hammer through a roof, stomp their foot, whatever it takes to create damage. They'll take a photo of it, they'll bring it down to you, they'll say, hey, look at this. You have damage, you need a new roof. The next step is that they want some money because they're going to go to Home Depot and they're going to buy supplies and they'll be right back. They get a truck, it's marked, it looks legitimate. It's easy to say, I want to get this taken care of before water starts coming through my ceiling and ruins my bedroom, right? And off they go with your money, never to be seen again, okay? The roofing scams are just rampant among the construction scams. So be wise consumers, I know you are. If you see these folks in your neighborhood, I would say I have a tendency to take people on. I would not recommend this to others. But sometimes I just get a little overconfident about myself. And I'll ask them questions about their business and what they're doing and how much they charge and are they insured and that sort of thing. And they generally leave rather quickly when I ask those questions. You are in power, really. You're empowered with information in this day and age to take care of yourselves and your home and your person and your money. And those are all the very important things to all of us. We want to safeguard those and we want to be able to do it ourselves and not have to rely our families, or our husbands, or our children to do that for us. So the Attorney General's office, I hope, offers you some resources that will allow you to do that, to feel empowered, to be the most knowledgeable person in the room at the next family dinner about what the latest scam is. And I appreciate your help in doing that. Another thing we do very quickly, and this has been important because this has just happened in the last few days. My office has to approve sales of hospitals and of certain healthcare providers that want to convert from being a nonprofit organization to a for-profit organization. And the law provides that we will review those transactions to make sure that they meet the law, that the nonprofit that is selling is getting a fair market value, isn't underselling its assets when it becomes a for-profit hospital or health facility or caretaker, and that the money that the charity has taken in while they've been a nonprofit gets reinvested in Colorado for the purpose that it was intended. So are you familiar with Innovage? Okay. Yeah, somebody use Innovage? So Innovage is the biggest PACE provider, and they are providing services that are great, that allow older adults to stay us all to stay in our homes longer. It's something I hope to do in my life. And it's really nursing home level services that are provided in home. It's a great thing. Innovage wanted to convert, and they are, from a nonprofit to a for-profit. So we just finished in our office reviewing that transaction, and $200 million from that transfer from nonprofit to for-profit status is going into a foundation to provide for older adults and the frail, elderly, disabled community in Colorado. So that, I think, is a very good thing, and it also ensures that Innovage is staying around in Colorado. They're going to be providing services, and we in the Attorney General's office are going to be a part of that and help provide oversight as they make that transition. So good things are happening. I am so pleased to get to talk to you. I really appreciate the invitation and the time. As you can tell, I like to tell stories and go on. So we have folks in our office, just like me, who will come out to organizations and speak about consumer issues and about fraud. And we will come to groups small and large and do that. So you can contact our office through our website, which is coloradoag.gov. Or you can just Google Colorado Attorney General, and you'll just pop right up to our website. But there's a contact number there. Let us know if we can be helpful. We come with brochures, we come with coffee mugs. And sorry I couldn't bring all that with me today. But we come with really important information that elaborates on some of the things that I've talked about this morning and that I think can be helpful. And we want to do that. That's part of our community engagement. And certainly part of the reason that I ran for this office was to be able to do these things, not just to be a lawyer, but to be a good public servant. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day. And let me know if our office can be of more service to you. So we want to do that. Thank you.
Now, we have about 10 minutes left before we break for lunch, and Ed just informed me that he has some information he'd like to share, but before he comes, let me read you the proclamation. It was supposed to precede the governor, but that didn't happen, so we'll read it now. Ed will come, and then I'll give you instructions for lunch. Everybody hungry? Sleepy? I see some of you nod now. I'm not going to call any names, but I get it. I get it. A lot of information, so hang in there with us, please. So, the proclamation is on page 5 of your program. It says, State of Colorado Proclamation. Whereas, Colorado senior citizens play a critical advocacy role by educating and lobbying for legislation benefiting the state of Colorado And whereas Colorado senior citizens contribute to every facet of our lives, including altering social and public policy. And whereas Colorado senior citizens sacrifice their time, their talents, and their financial resources in support of programs advancing the needs of the less fortunate. And whereas Colorado senior citizens share a vast diversity of invaluable experience and knowledge in the development of public policy. And whereas the citizens of the state of Colorado enjoy the lifestyle that they live in part because of the contributions of senior citizens, which the citizens appreciate. Therefore, I, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor of the entire state of Colorado, do hereby proclaim forever after March 20th, 2016 as Senior Day at the nation's 35th anniversary, given under my hand and the executive seal of the state of Colorado, this 13th day of March 2016, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor.
It's one thing to come down here and listen, but if you don't get off your face and get out and do something, it's not what we want. If you go to the newsletter, which you don't necessarily need to get out now, on page 6, we said the nuts and bolts of influencing legislature. That's really why you're here. How many of you think you want to influence legislature? How many of you feel you have influenced legislature? How many feel you could do more to influence legislature? Okay, I wanted to go through some of this because this is really what it's about. You would like to have you all become members. That just the sheer numbers helps. But if you heard, I alluded earlier, at one time we had 6 to 8 people regularly down here at the Capitol working with legislators, making everything known. We don't have that many now, but I want every one of you to get more active. Now, page 6 says, who to talk to when you can't meet them all. Number 1, your friends in the legislature. Number 2, your own legislator. Number 3, the committee that's hearing the bill. And number 4, the kingpins of the issue, because there are certain people that will be driving that weren't necessarily on the committee. And when do you meet with the legislators? The most effective way to meet with legislators is meet with legislators in his or her home. How many of you have ever gone to the home of a legislator? Got some work to do, don't we? Phone calls to his or her home. How many of you call them at home? Meet with the legislators at the State House. How many of you have come down to the State House to meet with them? Phone calls to the State House. I should see a lot of hands for that. No, not very many. Contacts of little or no value. Form letters, form emails. How many of you do form letters and form emails? Keep in mind there are better ways. When to meet with legislators. Don't contact the legislator only when you want action. Meet with them during the interim period. This is when legislation, you know, a lot of people don't realize, most of the legislation is formed in the summer and fall. You know, they have to submit their bills by around December 1st, most of the bills. There are late bills that come in. Meet them for lunch or coffee. Get acquainted socially if possible. Compliment where appropriate. How many of you have complimented a legislator? Got a lot of work to do. Coordinating your contact efforts. Don't duplicate. Know what other members of your legislative advocacy network are doing. Think about that. There are many groups that work on various pieces of legislation. It becomes much more powerful if you can work together with them. Coordinate your efforts and divide up what needs to be done. Send copies of your legislative correspondence to your coalition legislative coordinator. Not everyone has one of those, but and to the secretary. Report all contacts with legislators and what inspired. That's when you're working together with groups. Keep them informed. Following bills without bothering legislators. Now you don't have to be members, you can all go to our webpage and you can look up and you can find our bill sheet. It gives you direct access to all the bills we cover. And you can click in the upper left-hand corner of each of those bills and it'll bring up the entire bill. You can click somewhere else and it'll bring up the physical note so you can see what's going on. That's all available on our webpage. How do you follow it? You can call us at any time and we're glad to discuss that. In fact, passionately love to talk about it. And our webpage is coloradoseniorlobby.org. It's not a hard one to remember. And look under the heading, get involved, and then click on the bill sheet. That'll bring you up to our bill sheet, and it gives you all the information in summary form, and then again in the upper left-hand corner on the bill number, you can click and it'll bring up the entire bill. Rules for contracting legislators. Be practical. Find out what can realistically be accomplished. And that's a big thing because we can't get everything done every year. We can do certain things, but we can't fight every battle every year. Be as brief and concise as possible in presenting your case. Leave behind a one-page outline summary of your position. And this is always important, leave one with the administrative assistant. Because they're as likely to get action as the legislators themselves. They did kind of sort through for the legislature. And this is very important. Do not threaten with political or voter retaliation. Let me repeat that. Do not threaten with political or voter retaliation.
How many have done that?
Yeah, come see a handsome movie done that one time. Follow up your visit with a letter to the legislature. Not an email, a letter, a handwritten letter to your legislature. Now, this was actually written by David Barclay. Does anyone know David Barclay? This was in our newsletters back in 1983 or approximately at that time. That was written in there then, but nothing changes on that. I changed a couple of things in here because, emails are a little different, and they did not do emails back when this was written. Really what we want you to leave here with is action. We really want you to leave here and say, I'm going to make something happen. How many of you can say you're going to leave here and make something happen? Not very many hands. But let me ask again, how many of you are going to leave here and make something happen? I want to see all of them go up. That's what this is all about. It's not sitting here and listening to people talk, it's making things happen. So, at any rate, the two other little things, couple things I'd like to mention is, one is we no longer check in when people go over to the lunch. And the people that didn't pay will have a place where you can pay, but it'll be strictly on the honor system. And it's diagonally across, it's at the Masonic location, which is different than where we held it last year.
It's on the south, if I may, it's on the, so south 14th, over to Grand, it's on the southeast corner of Grand.
And we've got volunteers.
Yeah, we got, so at any rate, and there's also places that you've got several chances to become members, but Steve came up with a good idea, and I think we'll implement it with a board vote of 1 today. Anyone that fills out the questionnaire at 14 pages will become a member for a year. Yeah, for free. Yeah. So there's no cost for that. So every one of you leave and fill out that questionnaire.
All right, give yourselves a round of applause. We made it through the morning session. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we are doing very, very well with time. Okay. Adjourn for lunch. Participants adjourn to the Scottish Rite Masonic Center at 1370 Grant Street, diagonally across the street, southeast of